All right, The Rock did an interview with ESPN ahead of WrestleMania 40, and I thought it was one of the more fascinating interviews he's done to really give fans the inside story as to not only what he's been doing to prepare for this return, but also why he returned in the first place. Because of what led to him being a member on the TKO board and all of this other stuff. Very interesting interview with some good insight from Nick Khan, from Brian Gewirtz, a bunch of other kind of interesting tidbits here that we're going to run through and talking about this triumphant return for the final boss now himself, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. So they do note here in terms of the preparation. Of course, The Rock's been preparing since it says February. We know it's probably been longer than that when you just think about it. But they did have two rings kind of ready for him, one in Los Angeles, one in Hawaii. And they talked about kind of the training process and how they've gone about that. And they were actually a situation in Los Angeles where I'm looking at the notes here. Yeah, simulated matches against Gallus, so from NXT, and also there, Michael Hayes, of course, longtime backstage road agent guy, so he's there kind of supervising stuff. They had Bobby Roode also as well, Chad Patton, the referee, kind of involved in those matches, and, kind of having the WWE medical team there too to sort of continue to see, make sure everything's running well and safely and all that. So, yeah, they really have certainly put a lot into this, and of course it makes sense given the magnitude of this return and this match in general. But I thought those were interesting notes just to kind of see the process, what is going on in terms of the preparation, because we know there's a lot of preparation, right? And they've also talked about, kind of how The Rock slimmed down a little bit different when it comes to having an actual wrestling match versus the physique you need maybe to be displayed in movies, right? It's actually working a match and all this other stuff. And I know there have been plenty of people that have commented about, The Rock's stamina and all this other stuff, because remember, and it's pointed out too in this kind of article, is the fact that this guy has not had a full match like this in over a decade now. And the last time he did against John Cena, he had multiple injuries coming out of it. So that has always been the hesitation and the concern. And I think that was the big hesitation when we thought it was going to be The Rock versus Roman Reigns, right? Was that it's a WrestleMania main event singles match for The Rock. Now it's a tag team match. You can work around that, but still, there is going to be work that has to be done from The Rock in this tag team match on Saturday. So I thought that was, again, very interesting to kind of see how they're doing this and really the training journey that he's been on to get ready for this match. And here's a quote from The Rock actually in this one. It's quote, suplexes, a launch off the top. He's kind of going through the moves here. So suplexes, a launch off the top rope, a catch, like bodies hitting bodies. It's things like that you have to do and have to prepare for, and you're getting bruised up, you're hitting the ropes. It comes back fairly quick. It's like riding a bike. So he's talked about just sort of those particular sequences, those moves that you have to be able to really lean in on as you're doing the preparation here for this big return. And so I thought that was another kind of interesting detail in terms about what exactly he's focusing on as he's getting ready for this match. And remember also he has the thing coming up where he's doing he's playing Mark Kerr. So he's playing an MMA legend in the movie they're doing, The Smashing Machine. And so he's having to kind of get ready for that too simultaneously. And so that's kind of helped this process too when you think about just the whole training aspect of it and everything like that. And here's another interesting quote from The Rock he had in this interview, which again, you can read this for yourself, but I thought it'd be interesting to do a video on it to kind of really expand on some of the things that we're seeing here with The Rock making his return. Quote, fortunately for me, very lucky in that I became somewhat of a ring general where I see the circumference of the ring and where I need to be usually timing-wise. So again, the timing aspect's interesting there because timing is really important in our business of wrestling. So just putting in the work, training, the diet begins, which always sucks, and taking the falls and just getting my ass kicked every day. So we'll see how it goes. So, again, that's the quote there. And you're talking about someone who has not done this in so long, but yet there are things where it's just that repetition. It's the muscle memory that's going to kick back in and really get him ready to go for this match. And we know, too, they will have this down to a science by the time that match gets underway on Saturday night on WrestleMania 40 Night 1 and really understand what they're trying to achieve, what limitations Rock could have in this match, and all of that. Like, we know they're going to put them in the best position to succeed. And so that was one of the things that you look at. And so here's what else they kind of went into. They talked about the different discussions that were had between Nick Khan and The Rock going really into the last two WrestleManias. You go all the way back to WrestleMania 38 in Dallas, which we remember that was when Stone Cold Steve Austin made his return, wrestled Kevin Owens in that main event. They talked about trying to have the discussions, whereas Khan had just sort of moved into his role in WWE. Why not go all in, right? Get The Rock back. Of course, they had Austin come back. It didn't happen. They talked about kind of the scheduling and all this other stuff. It just didn't come to fruition. That's basically how it was put. Here's Nick Khan's comments, and he talked about kind of why now for The Rock and really how this started 2 years ago, WrestleMania 38, leading the conversations they had there. He said, quote, ultimately, Dwayne would say one of his greatest loves with WWE, but Dwayne needed to figure out the why. Beyond his love of wrestling or to try to prove that he was the real head of the table, so it didn't happen. Dwayne went about with his empire-building career, and then we re-engaged in late 2022. So fast forward, late 2022, those conversations start to happen, right? To lead towards WrestleMania 39, which took place in Hollywood. We all thought it would be the ideal place, right? You bring The Rock back in Hollywood. Maybe they figure something out there. But again, the schedule, the movie obligations, all this other stuff, and it just didn't happen. They couldn't make it work last year. And again, Nick Khan kind of commented on it. He said, quote, Dwayne did the on-camera intro before the Super Bowl. When he was leaving the stadium, Dwayne said on camera to his videographers, I'll see you again at SoFi this April. So all the signs were there. This is what they were going to do. But he said, ultimately, Dwayne and I met again. And again, the why wasn't there. So they could not come together on what the why was, how they could make this work. That was the whole thing. Why they didn't have it at WrestleMania 38, 39. Of course, the schedule, I think, had something to do with that too. But it was a matter of finding the right situation. Now, fast forward all this, Endeavor, TKO Group, it all comes into play, and that's when The Rock becomes a member of the board, right? They start discussing that board seat for The Rock and give him the opportunity, and that is where Nick Khan kind of finishes it off here, this whole story where he says, and then the why started to materialize for Dwayne, and The Rock had his own quote in this saying, I was excited to work with Nick, Ari, and Mark Shapiro to help expand the WWE TKO business to new heights. And, that is where now you look at more comments here from The Rock, which I think this is another one that's kind of interesting. He said, quote, that relationship that I have with Nick has certainly helped propel a lot of this forward, even though things didn't work out philosophically for us to get the deal done for WrestleMania 39 at SoFi Stadium, which, by the way, we heard all the rumors about that. They just could not come up with the right thing to make it work. That allowed this incredible opportunity for Cody Rhodes to come in, and as we are feeling and sensing and hearing from his passionate fans, what an incredible opportunity for him. Cody's got to tell the story. So here we are in WrestleMania 40. What can we deliver for them? How can it be unique? How can it be different? And how can we still put on the biggest WrestleMania of all time? So that kind of leads you to how we got here, right? For The Rock, it seems like beyond the scheduling issues, it was a matter of finding the right scenario where they could make this work. Now, we know all the thoughts we had from the start about pivoting in this storyline, how they started versus where they are now. They've come a long way from that initial backlash from the fans to where we are now, fully leaning into the heel Rock, the final boss, all of this other stuff. It's been an incredible pivot based off of that. But it does seem like the whole reason The Rock decided to return was purely because he thought this was the best opportunity to kind of have the vision he wanted. And again, I know some people will push back on that a little bit and say maybe it wasn't the right vision at the start, but we've gotten here. Now we've gotten to this point to where it all kind of seems to really be fitting together and presenting some of the best WWE television segments we've seen in a long time. And so whether it was the plan from the start, it doesn't really matter anymore, as The Rock would say. It really is just all about how we've gotten to this point. And it did seem like that TKO board spot, based on the comments you read here, was certainly a big thing that factored into it. You get him in that position, now you really have that chance to engage on the why. And that's what, remember, it's all about, the why. Why did he come back? Why would he push for this return now? And then talking about kind of the situation with Cody and everything that's led to this point. But here is something that I think is also interesting, worth noting. Brian Gewirtz, I mentioned, of course, longtime, friend of The Rock, WWE writer back in the day, all this now, certainly involved in all this, asked about, what's going to happen after WrestleMania? Because that's the question, right? We're not really necessarily thinking about that just yet in terms of the week-to-week, what's going to happen after WrestleMania. Now, it is pointed out, look, Rock's probably not going to be a mainstay on Raw every week after WrestleMania. We know we're still talking about a big movie star here. But he says, one of these things that Dwayne Johnson, this is in the article, The Rock, said to Brian Wirtz was that, quote, "I'm not off the board after WrestleMania. I'm still on the board, and I will always be a part of this. And we are in it now. This is our thing and will forever be our thing." And then that's when we kind of get the quote from Gewirtz here, who says, "But I do think there's going to be a Rock presence in WWE going forward until whenever he doesn't want to. I could definitely say that this isn't a over a day after WrestleMania thing, and I'm going to go off in the sunset now." And he goes on to add, "This whole run has really kind of rejuvenated him. He is not physically and mentally capable of ever being on autopilot, but there was kind of like this safe zone in the babyface space that is fun and fan-pleasing, but isn't the edgiest of things you can do in a ring with a microphone. Not to the point of blooding up the number one babyface in WWE and threatening his mother and dog," the final boss himself, right? Then he goes on to say, "It's like he's never been bigger than he is now," which I think is an interesting quote. "He's part of the board. He just kind of carries a certain weight as opposed to when he came back earlier when he was at a great level, but not this. That's why the final boss feels so organic." Because it is not only is the TKO literal final boss, that's who The Rock is now, right? But just the weight of Dwayne Johnson in 2024, and he says it just feels important. So I think that's a lot of interesting stuff there. It's a lot of information, but I think it is important information to really tie in how we now got to this point to where we are days away from The Rock making his in-ring return in WWE. He is now a TKO board member. He is acting like the full final boss that we know he can actually play up, as Gewirtz just said. And I just think it's so fascinating to think of how we got here with the way this all sort of started. And as we said, this is something that's been years in the making now to get to this point. We thought it could happen 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But now, here we are. Like, this is the position, and it looks like from all the stuff you read and everything out there, in something like this and the different comments, it really was just about finding the right why, as Nick Khan said, and figuring out what would work the best for The Rock if he was going to make that return. Because each year as you're doing this, you're getting a year older. You're getting a year older. You're not getting any younger. You have to pull the trigger on this and do it sooner rather than later. Now is the time they've decided to do it. It seemed like all the dots connected, and The Rock figured out why he needed to come back. He figured out what the big reason was. And now, as a member of the TKO board, he can lean into being the final boss. And I think it's worked out perfectly for this storyline heading into the two-night WrestleMania 40 main events, where we'll have The Rock and Roman Reigns team up to take on Cody and Seth Rollins on night one. And then, you can hear my voice is going out. I've been doing so many videos this week. Then we'll have Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes on night two. And we fully expect The Rock to be involved in both of those matches in a very big way. So, again, highly suggest you read the interview. Really good stuff, I thought, just on The Rock's return. There's a lot of media stuff out there you can check out this week, but I thought this was an interesting one, just looking at all the reasons as to why The Rock is back, and now gets ready for a huge match, WrestleMania 40, night one. But appreciate you guys watching. As always, hit that subscribe button. A lot of WrestleMania 40 coverage, as I said. You can hear it from my voice. A lot of videos this week. So appreciate you watching. As always, we're going to have some stuff as well for WrestleMania 40. Thinking about doing some live stuff right after the shows on Saturday and Sunday. Hope you guys would enjoy that. But yeah, let me know what you think about this ESPN article from The Rock. And ultimately, he's back. The Rock is going to make his official in-ring return on Saturday in Philadelphia, WrestleMania 40, night one.